Hey everyone, my name is Andy. I'm a Salesforce admin, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about debugging and testing your flows. So debugging is really helpful when you're working on a new flow and you just want to make sure that everything kind of works on a surface level, all the paths are working, and you're able to create records, right? So it doesn't fail in production when you go live. And if you do go live, if this flow starts failing in a weird time or you're not sure why, you can debug it while it's active and kind of run records through it to see why, this flow may be failing. So it's a very helpful tool. So I'm going to kind of walk through debugging this really simple flow. So basically all this flow is doing is it's just going to fire when an account record is created or updated, right? And it's just checking if it's new or if the record rating field is changed. Okay, so record rating is going to be this pick list that just has these couple values, right? So if it's new or if rating is changed, and then it's just going to check what the account rating is. So is the account rating hot, warm, or cold? And then if it's neither of those, it's going to go through this other section, right, which will just end the flow. But if it is hot, warm, or cold, we're going to set a value. Okay, this is going to be a name value that we're going to use to create a new opportunity that we will relate to this account, right? So for example, if it's a hot account, then we're going to say big sale, right, for the opportunity name. And then we're going to create a new opportunity and just relate it to the account. So pretty straightforward. So let's go ahead and debug this. Okay, let me save actually real quick. Okay, I'll go ahead and debug. And we have a few options here. So the first one is going to say path for debug to run. We only have one path, run immediately, but let's say we had like a scheduled path or something, right? That was another option. We would be able to select that as well to kind of debug the different paths. Debug options. So we're going to choose skip start condition requirements. And basically what this is going to do is it's just going to ignore the entry criteria for this flow, and it will just fire anytime we put a record through it, right? So that way we can just debug with any record anytime and just kind of try to get something out of it. Okay. Run flow as another user. So this is set to default in this Trailhead org, but basically you can enable it in automation settings. And this is very helpful if the flow is failing for maybe like an end user, or you want to test and see how the flow would run for maybe like a certain group of users. And run flow in rollback mode. So this is automatically checked. I cannot uncheck it in a record triggered flow. But if this was like an auto launch or I believe a screen flow, you can uncheck this. And basically what it means is if this is in rollback mode, then nothing is going to get committed to the database. So no records will be created or updated or anything like that. And if I uncheck it, they will. And then run the flow as created or updated. So in this instance, it doesn't really matter if we're running it as if the record's created or updated, right? It's just ultimately checking the rating, and we're skipping the start conditions anyway. So for us, it doesn't matter. So we're going to choose an account. Okay. And this account, right, remember, has a rating of hot. So we'll hit run. Okay, cool. So we hit an error, right? So this failed. Okay, this is why we debug. And we see here, create records, create opportunity is where it actually failed. And it failed because we missed a required field, stage name. So if I open this up, I can see, oh yeah, I missed stage name, and we'll just set it to prospecting. Done. Save. Okay. Debug again and run. Okay, so now it passed, right? So we kind of got the error message out of the way, and we would have avoided getting that error maybe like in production, right? So a little more we can do here in this debug detail section. So I can choose expand all, and we can walk through this debug log. So we can see at the top here, the interview started. So this is how the flow interview started. I ran it. This is the version. This is the record that actually triggered the flow and the start time. Okay, we skipped the starting condition requirements, right? They were skipped so we could debug it. The decision was hot, right? That would be this node right here, right? And the outcome was hot. We set in this assignment we set the variable name value to big sale. And then down here, we created a new opportunity with an account ID that was the record that triggered the flow, a close date of today, the name of that name variable value, big sale, and stage name of prospecting. And then here we can see that the record is ready to be created, but we had rollback mode set, so nothing was added, deleted, or modified to the database. And then the interview finished, and it took 0.44 seconds, and it finished at this time, right? So very, very, I feel like intuitive kind of step through of this flow. And there's a couple more things that we can do here. So if you click on this debug panel preferences, you can click show API names. So it's going to show the API names of, like this assignment or this created opportunity node. Uncheck that. We can click show governor limit consumption. So this is very helpful if, let's say, your flow is throwing SOQL query limits or DML exception limits, right? Like you're trying to create too many records at once or something like that. And that's really common with like a loop, right? So if you have a loop that's maybe running, that's doing gets inside of a loop, that can easily throw a SOQL query limit. So what you can do is once you check this, we can kind of go down here, and if I click on this guy, right, this is our create opportunity, we can see DML statement 1 out of 150, right? So I'm nowhere near the limit, and this flow is running good, right? But if this was in a loop, maybe this would be 150 out of 150, right? Or 151, and then it would throw the error, right? So we'd be able to see that. And then transactional boundaries. So this is basically just, let's say my flow was big and complex and had a lot of, it was creating contacts and tasks and updating the account, etc. And it failed right at the bottom when I tried to create this opportunity. I could use this transactional boundary to kind of see like what was created and updated before this flow actually failed, right? And if I don't have any rollbacks in my error handling, this would be very helpful to kind of see what happened before we got to that failure, right? So the debug log is very helpful. And again, if this flow was failing while it was active, I would just grab the record that it was failing with, and I would just come over here, go to debug, and I would just look it up and run it and see what was happening, right? Now, another thing we can do is we can create tests. So if you're familiar with Apex, when you create an Apex class, you would create an Apex test class as well, right? And you want to try to get, you need test coverage when you're moving Apex classes into production. So a new feature in Flow is this test flow testing feature, which is pretty cool. I don't think it replaces QA or user end testing or anything like that, but it's very helpful when you've just built this in your sandbox and you want to just like run through every path and just make sure everything works well, at least again on a surface level before you push it into like a QA environment or something. So I can click view tests. And when we're creating these tests, I want to think about like every option. So, since our flow is looking at when a record's created or is changed and the rating is hot, warm, or cold, I want to try to cover all of it, right? So when an account is created, I want to try to make a test for created with a rating of hot, created with a rating of warm and cold, etc., right? And then on the flip side, I want to make 3 tests for when an account is changed from, hot to warm or hot to cold or warm to cold, right? Things like that. So try to make tests that could cover every scenario. And even negative tests, like maybe if this account had none set for the rating, to make sure that it's falling in that bucket, right? That default decision, since it's not hot, warm, or cold. But we're just going to create one for right now just to kind of show it and keep it really simple. So what we can do here is we can set test details, trigger, and path. So this is going to be the name of our flow test. So we'll just call this account. We'll say hot account created test, right? And we'll just say tests when a new account account is created with the rating of hot. Okay, we'll do created, and it's going to run immediately. Okay, so let's set initial triggering record is going to be that household that I've been using, right? So it doesn't look like it did anything, but if you scroll down, you can see that fields are matching. So it actually kind of mapped this to the fields I have, and we see rating is hot. Okay, rating is hot. And we're going to set assertions. So assertions are like how you can actually test if this passes or fails, right? So, an assertion could be like this equals this, or an assertion could be like, we want to make sure that this does not equal this, right? Something like that. So it's kind of up for interpretation. You kind of create the assertion you want, but you want to make sure you're checking for at least something. So in this instance, we want to make sure that we're checking that the decision outcome was hot, right? Because the rating is hot. So we'll add a custom failure message and we'll say, decision was not hot. Okay. Basically, that just means that if this test fails, we could look at the failure log and we could see, oh, decision was not hot. Okay, interesting. It for some reason it didn't go through the hot one, right? And then maybe we also say that the name value, we want it to equal big sale, right? And then we'll just say name variable does not equal big sale, okay? And then we'll hit save. Okay, so view test. So we have our test here, right? And we're gonna go ahead and run it. So we'll click it, we'll hit run, and it passes, right? But let's see it error. So let's say this actually it says big opportunity, right? I'll save. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and click this and run it again, and we have a fail, right? So if I go here and I choose run test and view details, we can see the assertion 1 passed, right? So, okay, so our first assertion was to check that the decision outcome was hot. Cool. But assertion 2 failed because condition was not met. Variable name equals big sale. Custom failure message. Name variable does not equal big sale, right? So we can say, okay, that's weird. The name variable doesn't equal big sale. That's because it equals big opportunity, right? So there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. You don't have to have flow tests in order to, deploy a flow, but it's a pretty good habit to get into and should probably start doing it. That way you can at least try to cover some of the basics when creating a new flow and make sure you're trying to cover everything. So that is debugging and creating tests in Flow. Thanks for watching.